the Event Managers Project Manager series is all about just kind of supporting event managers in this time of great uncertainty and change, to see that there is another option, and there's a way that to kind of transfer those skills in potentially different industries. So every week we're joined by a new project manager or an expert in kind of making career transitions. And today we're joined by Perry, which I'm very, very excited about. So generally it's just about sharing their experiences, getting an understanding of what it means to be a project manager, and therefore kind of seeing how potentially you could make that transition, and if not making that transition, certainly upskill and use those skills within, still, if you want to remain in the events or more of the creative industries. So I am delighted that Perry has come to talk to us about an area of project management we haven't really heard about before, some of the sectors she's worked in, but also potentially a bit about what it means to be a Scrum Master, because I know that there's lots of project management words that kind of get bandied around, and it's really hard to kind of understand what that means. Is that different to a project manager, or is it not? So Perry, just before we begin, we always like to start these discussions with a few quick fire questions. I've just got 3 quick fire questions for you, and you just have to answer as quickly as possible. How's that sound?
Sounds good.
Brilliant. Okay, Perry, what was your favorite age?
I have to say now, because I feel like the older I've gotten, the more that you're able to see and reflect back on your life, and you have the experience behind you to make things better.
Amazing. And what would we find on your nightstand, Perry?
I don't have a nightstand, but right next to my bed is my desk, my standing desk, and that's where I've been all the time lately.
Nice, standing desks. I've heard of really good things about them. Yeah.
It's amazing,
Yeah.
especially working long hours. Just at least being able to alternate standing and sitting is very nice.
Yeah, nice. Okay, give us a snapshot of an everyday small joy for you.
Oh my gosh. I think there are a few things, but definitely right now, the top of my list is my kids. So seeing them in the morning, having dinner together at night. We're very big on making sure to do that, because life is really hectic, and that's almost the only time I can get face to face. So for me, that's the best part.
Oh, wonderful. You're definitely human, definitely one of us, and we're so, so glad to have you here. So Perry, I'm going to hand over to you to share a bit about your experiences, and then we'll just open to the floor to any kind of key reflections or any questions anyone has. So I'll hand over to you, Perry.
So first of all, thank you so much for having me, because when Jay told me about the group and what you're doing and how you're taking, this uncertainty of the industry and COVID and banding together and supporting each other, and then to start the call, with Kim talking about her job, I think it's so wonderful what you're doing, and just really happy to be here. And I also love that it's a casual conversation more than anything. So I'm gonna it's always been really interesting to me to figure out how people get to where they are, what are all the different pieces that they acquired along the way, whether it's education or jobs, and then so I'm going to try to do a bit of that, and then I'm going to talk about some of the stuff that Jay brought up as well. So when I was doing my undergrad, I was not one of the lucky people that knew what they wanted to do for the rest of their lives. And so I changed my majors a couple of times. The second change was to computer systems engineering. And it was what was a good job, up and coming job at the time, and went short of halfway through that degree. And it was great, because I knew nothing about computer programming, and got a little bit of it, the technical skills and the feel of what that job would be like. But at the same time, I discovered psychology and philosophy, and realized not only can I enjoy doing a psychology degree and have all those credits transfer, but for the rest of the remaining time, I can take just about any topic, any class that I want, and still be able to graduate on time. So I graduated with a psychology degree with a lot of classes all over the place. Uh, and then I still was not really sure what would I do with what I learned, and so tried teaching and social work, and just kind of, there was a little bit of wandering at the beginning for sure, and then realized that the IT department at the university where I worked as an undergrad was hiring a full-time position, and it was in classroom support. So basically, you're helping faculty and students learn to use software, troubleshoot, learn to use different equipment and solutions in the classrooms and the computer labs, and did that for a while, and just realized, okay, I'm really liking information technology. That's going to be a path that I can continue to pursue. And then I was missing school, and so trying to figure out, okay, what's the logical next step here? I did my master's in information management, and the best way I could describe it is, an MBA, but with a very high focus, like everything is IT focused pretty much. And so that really helped me learn about a span of topics, including project management. That was one of the classes. And at the time, the professor that was teaching this class, not only was he wonderful at teaching us, what is project management and best practices, but he was also trying to get us all ready to take the project management professional through the Project Management Institute, so the PMP exam. Unfortunately, by the time I finished that class and graduated, I really hadn't done any considerable project management, and as you may know, that you have to have a certain number of hours of experience under your belt to be able to do that. But really, that was the second time after psychology where it, like, a topic felt like I've been looking for this all my life. I didn't know I was looking for it, but it just really was one of those profound moments where it makes sense, because I loved I loved that you can harness, the intelligence of different people. Like, I always saw the value in that, but I wasn't really sure how do you take advantage of that. I loved that you have to, learn about a lot of topics and synthesize that information, and that you could do it in a lot of different areas, and that to reach something, that that we can focus on a goal of, how do we make today work for us so that tomorrow is better, right? We're imagining what that looks like as a group and creating that map and adjusting to it. And so after completing my master's degree, I was promoted to be the manager for a classroom support team in one of the fastest growing campuses at the university at that time. That's when I really had a chance to also do a lot more project management. And a few years into that job, the IT department was creating their own project management office. And that's when relationships are really important too, because I had a wonderful leader who knew that that's what I was interested in. And so as soon as the new leader for the project management office for the PMO joined in, she made sure that I was part of the PMP prep class that they were having. And that really gave me an opportunity to learn about this new office, the new leader, the people that had been doing project management across the department, because there were about like 500 people in our department, and about 4 or 5 of them were moved into that office because they were already doing project management. And then as soon as we were done with class, I knew I was going to sit through the exam. It's a 4-hour exam. So I took 3 weeks of just every day after work, all weekends, that's all I'm doing. I'm reviewing because I wanted to make that time as focused and as short as possible. And I did not want to sit through the 4 hours ever again. And so that was the first thing I did, and then and I was really the first person to finish it from our cohort, and was offered the project manager job shortly afterwards. And when the PMO was forming, because we were in central IT, there were all kinds of projects. So you could be doing software development or software integration, getting, different pieces of software to speak to each other, or you could be doing IT security that could be, process oriented, or actually customizing software to make sure that we're meeting certain expectations. It was really all over the place. And then, years into it, as we started to grow, we started to put processes in place. Then there was more opportunity for specializing and working on different programs. But for the most part, my entire time at the university, it's been very IT focused, with the exception of the last program that I worked on, which was refugee education, and really got to use other abilities that, were not strictly IT or project management. I mean, even QAing Arabic translation, because I'm fluent in Arabic. But then I got to a point where I had so many amazing opportunities, because in the time that I was in the PMO, not only was I able to get my PMP, I was able to get my Scrum certification, and the Scrum certification is really another flavor of project management. And I would say that is what what all industries are kind of moving towards right now. And mainly it's because of the uncertainty of things. Things are shifting around us all the time. So you're doing your planning in smaller increments, you're focusing, you're doing quarterly planning typically for most organizations, but as you manage projects, you're doing 2-week increments of what are we going to complete over the next 2 weeks, and staying focused on that, and then being able to keep the team focused. I would say the Scrum Master role is also a little bit more hands off when it comes to the content of what the team is doing. You're more of a facilitator and removing impediments and things like that, as opposed to a content subject matter expert. And so that certification, in addition to an ITIL certification, which is IT service management, and it's basically, best practices around how do you provide good IT service. So after you've done your project and you've created something new, how do you manage that moving forward? So there was opportunity to learn so much during that time, and to get different certifications. And that's where I'll pivot for a moment between, okay, what is the value of the certification? And really, seeing statistics through the PMO Council, which I believe now is under Gartner, and I saw that a few years ago. Statistically speaking, just because you have the certifications doesn't necessarily mean you're a better project manager. And when I was about to leave the university, part of it was feeling like, no matter how many amazing experiences you have in one place, moving around industries, organizations is really important. And so the next thing I did was consulting, and that allowed me to be in a few different organizations, and to see how the communication and the interaction with people was much more of a valuable skill, because it doesn't matter that you know the best practices for project management. Every organization has its flavor and understanding of what project management is and what they're expecting from you and what the team will need. And you can't go by the book. So it's a matter of going in and figuring out what do they need. Also with consulting and contracting, you have short assignments and you have to build those relationships very fast and build the trust to be able to move forward together. And so to me, it was just trying to figure out what that looked like. And even, after building relationships with people for 15 years, then going into these assignments where, okay, now I have a couple of months to get to know the people and work with them and figuring out what they need from me and how can we get there, was such a different perspective and a lot of soul searching too, because even though I was consulting for a particular company, but if I went into an organization to consult, there were additional interviews at times. So you're having to figure out, okay, this is not exactly a project management assignment. This is a technical documentation assignment. What skills do I have from my past that fit this frame? But also, how can I listen to what they need from me first? And I learned this the very hard way. How can I listen to what they need and on the spot, transpose that, those old skills into what I can do based on what I've heard from them. And of course, going into these assignments and realizing that, the way we present things is not always, it's an interview, it's an hour long. You cannot do it justice to see the entire reality. So then trying to investigate the right things, because when I started consulting, I moved now from education to healthcare. And healthcare is so different on so many levels, especially in the context of information technology, because there's not as much standardization to the tools, all the legal repercussions and the commercial practices of insurance companies and the different providers and the different systems that are involved just create this complexity that you're trying to code for. You're trying to figure out. It's not any, like I felt when I was in education, we could code for 80% of the use cases, and then there'll be exceptions that are going to come up often, and you code for those too. Healthcare, it was all exceptions, and in year 2 in healthcare, now I'm actually in an organization directly, not contracting, not consulting or anything, and building these relationships. And here in month 3, year 2 of healthcare, there is so much to learn. And I've, in my last position too, I'd worked with a few people that had been in healthcare for over 12 years, and there was still a lot to learn when it came to the data and the regulations and how, and how to translate that to do what we need for our business. And so it's, for me, the other component is just being comfortable with saying I don't know. I think as a project manager, a lot of the times you're trying, and for, as an event manager, you're trying to get certainty. You're trying to get to the bottom of what do we all know collectively, and where are the holes? Where are the things that we need to go research or get more information, and how do we go about getting that information? And at times people are not willing to speak up and just say I don't know, it's okay. Nobody has to be the expert in anything, because we're in a world that's specializing more and more. So so setting that example of, it's okay that you don't know, it's okay that I can't tell you the answer on the spot, but you can trust me that I'm going to go get that answer. If I don't know, or if I make a mistake, that I'm going to share that openly with everybody, so that there's, there's that safe environment. We're not operating out of fear. And we're human, like Jay said, we're doing the right thing together as a team. And I mean, it's so much easier said than done. But I think as I've transitioned between different positions, and the expectations have changed, and the level of and the learning curve, it has increased, and especially in healthcare. And to be honest, before getting my last, this full-time job that I'm in right now, I was trying to get out of healthcare. But like Kim said, I felt like, okay, something is pulling me back into this for some reason. I cannot, that's all that's all the offers I'm getting. That's all the opportunities that look interesting. So there must be something to investigate there. And so just continuing to be comfortable with that journey, and knowing what my core values are. How am I going to show up? Because it's so frustrating to not know. It's so frustrating. Even with the transferable skills, right? You're still in a new environment, trying to figure out, how is this going to apply here in this specific situation? But as long as I'm operating from, core beliefs where I'm trying to be authentic and honest, I want to learn, I want to do the right thing, eventually people see that, and see that, or, that I'm consistent with them. So no matter what flaws I bring, or what lack of knowledge is there, they see that, I'm very motivated to build up on it, and to work with them. Yeah. And I think the other thing that I just wanted to touch on real quick, the differences between full-time contracting and consulting. So apart from, quick relationship building that I mentioned, I think it's the, for me, it was about the phase in my life, because you could do contracting and consulting in a lot of different ways too, and you could do it in the way that fits you. And for me, it always had to be a full-time position, because that's what I needed. So that component didn't change, but I think it depends on what we're looking for, because during that exploration phase after leaving the university, I did consulting, contracting. I taught an IT proposal course. It was just a matter of, that's what I needed at that time to learn more about what's out there, and what do I like in organizations, and what do I like in a job, and how do I make my next home comfortable. And I have to say, it was such an amazing experience, and I feel like, okay, this choice that I'm in now makes so much more sense because of that experience of exploring.
I think you made some incredible points there. I've got some questions of my own, just while they are thinking about theirs, just some points there that I really think were important. I read somewhere, somebody said, be a contractor or a self-employed or freelance or whatever you want to call it, at least once, for the very reasons that you mentioned there, Perry, to kind of get that variety, get those options, but just to see how it is, even if it's, no, this isn't for me. It kind of makes the position that you're in next, it kind of helps with that decision making, to know that you're on the right path if it's not right for you.
Totally. And I've had people that were on the other side that I cannot imagine doing anything else other than consulting and moving from job to job, and that was what was, what made them happy. So I think at least it lets you know exactly how you want to work.
Yeah, Completely. My question for you, am I right in saying the PMP you did was with
Yes.
PMI? Yes, so that is one. So we haven't talked much about PMI, but just for those who don't know, so there's obviously the APM. There's lots of project management qualifications you could do. The ones that have been mentioned so far, most have been APM and Prince 2. And PMI is it tends to be a more kind of US based qualification, but it's not solely. It's a very kind of international qualification. But just for those who might not know what PMI is.
Yeah. So with colleagues from Egypt too, which is where I'm originally from, PMI seems to be what is popular there. So you're right, Jay. Like, it depends on the country, and they do have a huge global presence. But as I did my research, I don't think, so the UK is unique in that PMI is not as prevalent there. And honestly, even in the US, I think some companies, it's so interesting right now, the dichotomy, because some companies are asking for the PMP in the US, and yet when you go in there, they want you to run things in an agile manner. And so a Scrum certification would probably be more appropriate in that case anyways. So I think even with certifications, it's important to ask, okay, how do you do your project management?
Yeah, that's so interesting. It's almost like the qualification is just kind of showing that you have a base level understanding, but they may be using a completely different methodology. So just being prepared for that, that's really interesting. I wondered, my question, Perry, was around what, as project management or Scrum Master or whatever, whatever capacity, what do you think being in this industry gives you? What is the benefit for you really of being a project manager and having this career trajectory?
That's really interesting. So to be completely transparent, I don't know that project manager is going to be the trajectory until I retire. And I'm having almost this, because I think that exploring helped me kind of become really clear about why I loved project management and what I enjoyed about the day to day. But at the same time, I know me, and I know that something else is coming next. I don't know what it is yet, and this position that I'm in is helping me learn so many new things to kind of try to explore what is that next thing. So I think for me, it was really about coming back to what do I love doing on a day-to-day basis, and what it does for me, whether in the short term or the long term, being a project manager, is you have to have this broad perspective on so many aspects of a project, right? Because you're worried about the contract, and you're worried about the especially in my industry, right? And then you're worried about the development of the software, and and then next thing, you might be talking to marketing because you're launching something new. So you're exposed to so many different parts of the organization and that work, but you still have the opportunity to dive deep into different topics as needed, and as you get interested. And that's, for me, that's the biggest benefit of it. But I think you can get that from other positions too.
Amazing. I've got another question, but I'm just going to check to see. Go on, Kim.
Yeah.
I can see you going.
You mentioned that it's important to move around and to get to know other companies and how they do things and what programs they use. And I think it is quite acceptable for people to move around now and not just do their apprenticeship and stay there until they retire. But what time frame do you think is a good one to actually get to know the company, learn all the skills you want to learn, and then move on again?
I feel like at least 6 months for me have been the right timing, because by 3 months, I usually feel like, okay, now, now their relationships have been built enough to work together. And so you get a few more months of, okay, now we're all on the same page. The team is formed. I have an understanding of the organization, what is their strategy, where we're going, the culture. But I think, it depends on the place too, because I think, sometimes, so first of all, like, to me, that's why consulting and contracting were great, because the understanding from the beginning is this is temporary. So nobody's expecting something different than what it is. But the other thing is just making sure that if it's not a situation that is comfortable on both sides, to end that as soon as possible. Because I've had that too, where it's like, okay, this is really, when we interviewed, when we spoke at the beginning, it sounded like it'd be a really good fit. But this is just not a great fit for both of us. How can we end it in an amicable and in a good way that's acceptable too?
Cool.
So as you are going through the transition from position to position, and what skills did you feel were transferable, and also what got you interested in project management?
So I'll answer the second question first. I think it was the diversity that project management provided, in terms of the types of projects. Essentially anything could be a project. So I felt like, events is a type of project, and that was one type. And project management just provided me with being able to use very similar skills, but in a far, kind of more flexible and broader scope of what I could be working on. So for me, it was the excitement of the change and the different types of projects and the different types of people that I could be working on. I think the skills that were transferable, and then I went on to do change management, which again is using very, very similar skills. And then as a coach, using, all three of those disciplines really in what I do now in terms of building programs, building events, doing one-on-one coaching. But I'm using all of those elements. And I think if I had to identify the key transferable thing, it would probably be very similar to what you said, Perry. And it is all about the relationships and the people side of things, which I'd had a good foundation, as a result of being an events professional and needing to network, needing to deal with lots of, difficult people, and, it's chaotic and you're stressed and you're having to manage those people and those relationships in a constructive way whilst being in high pressured environments, which meant that was probably, the most effective thing that has kind of followed me throughout every career transition I've taken. That ability to converse and manage and deal with lots of different people and build those relationships really quickly, is probably what I'd say.
Yeah, and I find that to be a common theme in whatever jobs that, even just speaking to colleagues that are not project managers that are doing different things, that at the end of the day, it's all about the soft skills and the ability to show that we can learn, because the content is not as challenging to learn. It might take time depending on the complexity of it, but if the willingness is there, that's not a problem. It's the soft skills that if people aren't willing to work on and continue to improve, that you can't force somebody, you can't teach them, you can't put them in a class necessarily and have them learn that, if they're not as interested.
I think you're so right. I think you're so right. So I'm going to go to any other questions, and I'm hoping my question is going to pop up just in case there's any other questions from the room. Zanita, go ahead.
I'm still a bit unsure about the Scrum Master. So what's the, like, why did you feel you had to do qualification in that specific project management? I don't know, is it style, type? What does it give you more than other types of project management?
So in the US in particular, there are two main styles that companies do project management. A lot of times they're in between, but to simplify, the waterfall approach, which could include iterative planning, but for the most part, you're really looking at the very end result that you need to get to from the get-go. You're doing a lot of planning in advance, and then you're rolling out that plan, and adjusting as needed. But the biggest difference is, I would say, the amount of planning between waterfall and agile, and so the Scrum certification is that other approach of looking at things and chunking the work in a very small manner. So if and I'll focus on IT because that's where I'm comfortable, but if you're building a new software, you're figuring out what are the minimum features that your users will need. You're starting with a proof of concept, something very, very simple, and then you're adding features as you go, and you're adjusting, and you're adjusting based on real tangible feedback, because you've actually completed for each iteration, for each time frame that we set, you actually complete tangible work that you can put out in front of your users to get that feedback. I think it's just more of a philosophy, and what's appropriate for what is being built. And a lot of times companies, need both. They want to see the long-term plan, but they love Agile because you can pivot with less cost, because you're not building everything all at once, and then things change and you're having to redo all of that together.
So in the context, Zanita, like if you were project managing an event, which you absolutely could, you apply a project management methodology to an event, there is a very fixed time where that event and what it looks like, and that would probably take more of a waterfall approach, because it's very fixed. You know the date, you know what it looks like, you know what you're creating. So it's very waterfall, which a waterfall approach would be something like Prince 2, APM, those types of models. Whereas, often in software, like Perry was saying, software, IT, any kind of, product like a phone, they can have shorter sprints, what they call sprints, shorter periods where they do release something, but there's more to do to it. So they will release it as is. So they will release a soft piece of software, and it might not have facial expression, recognition, or all these other features, but they just release that, and then they continue to add to it. So that's where that more agile sprint approach would work, where they just do the minimum viable product in order to get that feedback, instead of waiting years to launch something that has everything that would be irrelevant in a year's time.
Okay.
Did that sum that up correctly as well, Perry? Because
that was a perfect way to sum it up. Thank you. And thank you for tying it to event management.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
It makes sense, because when I was part of the marketing team, my manager wanted to introduce Agile for the team, and I just couldn't fit in. So they had to leave me out, because I was like, I can't work the way you work for events, for like they did 2-week sprints. And I was like, I can't really do that because it doesn't work for the event. So yeah, they did this agile in a 2-week sprint with my colleague who was the content in marketing, so they could do that because those are can do in short term, but it's just I just could not fit into it in terms of the event because it just didn't work.
Well, and I think the tough part too is that each person has their own interpretation of what that means. And so part of it is just level setting, because I've had times where, oh yeah, we want to run this Agile, but we want you to complete the entire requirement document and tell us exactly what you're going to provide us at the end. And you know, earlier, I guess, you know, a few years ago, I would have kind of tried to, well, this is not really Agile, but at this point in my career, it's just like, okay, everybody has different interpretations. Let me understand what you want. I don't care what you're calling it. I just want to make sure that I'm on the same page with you of what we need to do. And then my job, then once I understand it and figure out like, how can I match up? So if I was doing the event management, you know, it's, okay, I know what I need to do at the end, but maybe I can break my tasks into 2-week increments so that I can give them the comfort to see what's coming over these next 2 weeks, because maybe that's what they were looking for. You know, I don't know. It takes that conversation to figure out what they need. And then ultimately, when there's tension between both attempts, it's like, yes, I can give you the requirement document. But just understand that part of it is as we put, as we demo this to the users, we're going to get feedback. And that means that this requirement document is not set in stone. So so that work will have to be redone. Are you comfortable with staff spending their time doing that? You know, and if I can get an estimate from the people that will be doing the work, that's helpful too, because it's like, okay, are you comfortable throwing away X number of hours of effort to get what you want? And that's not always possible, but I think it helps to just figure out what do you even mean by what you're saying, because I'm saying Agile, you're saying Agile, but we're not talking about the same thing.
Yeah. And I think, Perry, we used a bit of a dual model because I was in the events industry, but I was always working on new products, something new. So we would give them a requirements. We would give them okay, this is what it's going to look like. But we were working in 2-week sprints where we were getting feedback on the product every 2 weeks, and we were changing things as it evolved. So it wasn't completely agile because there was a kind of plan, a set plan in the beginning, but we used a sort of agile mindset and some of those techniques in order to make sure that what we were producing was always what the customer wanted, and we were making changes as we were going along to that original plan because it changed. So yeah.
And I think, you know, the devil's in the details, because we can have a high level requirement document that doesn't spell everything out and give them that comfort of, here's your road plan, here are the pieces that should be there by the end, and sometimes that's really all they want at the end, just to see where we're going.
Yeah, brilliant. Amazing. Thank you so much, Perry. We're just going to finish up. We've got a couple of minutes just to finish up with a key takeaway that you've taken away from this. So we'll start with Kim, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I think it's something you said fairly at the beginning, that you like to harvest all the information from so many different people and put it all together and string it together and make it into that end result. And yeah, I think this is what I've always liked about event management as well, that, you know, like, I don't know everything. I have my different suppliers and they're the expert at what they're doing, and I'm just making sure they have everything they need to do their job, and then they deliver what I need for my event. So yeah, I really related to that.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Kim, for sharing. Thank you. Sunita?
I think for me, apart from all the interesting knowledge about what you were saying is the fact what you mentioned, that the being a freelancer or doing like different jobs, that someone has to do it at least once in your life to find out whether you know, because I'm just there at that point that I'm trying to do that to find out whether this is for me or I have to go back to a full-time job, as you said that you tried it out. So yeah, I think it just kind of almost tells me again the same thing, like I have to try this because I don't know.
I feel like as we get older, we stop exploring, and we stop giving ourselves that permission to explore. And just in the last couple of years, I am almost rediscovering it again, and the value of it.
Yeah, there's no denying it's scary, but you know, the excitement of that exploration, that discovery, I think is, yeah, it opens up a lot of opportunity, I think. My biggest takeaway was around understanding a bit more about the Scrum and what the kind of the difference is, and you know, the smaller increments. And I think that that's a really, really interesting thing for me, and understanding a bit more. So that's definitely an area I really want to delve into a bit more and learn more about. So thank you, Perry, for providing that intro, and thank you for joining us.
Absolutely. And scrumalliance.org is a good place to check out. That's actually where I received the Scrum certification.
Yeah.
And they have a lot of great resources there.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for that. And thank you all for joining us today. Thank you, Zanita. Thank you, Kim. It was lovely having you.